Cat Days by Griffin Rose on AO3. Episode 48. Chapter 13. Let's see how far we've come. After the movie, the kids groggily got ready for bed. Izuku and Hitoshi pulled out the spare futons in the living room, while Eri curled up on her bed. Shouta checked over them all once more before going to bed himself. A cut-off scream woke him up later. Not unusual, Eri had nightmares all the time, and he was used to jumping up to comfort her. Except, this wasn't Eri. The sobbing was more familiar, more heart-wrenching because he knew the owner so much better. Hitoshi's voice blended with the cries, trying to calm him down, and Eri poked her head out onto the hallway, curious but afraid she wasn't allowed closer. Shouta rubbed her head briefly as he passed, striding into the room and dropping next to Izuku, pulling him up to his chest. Izuku clung to him, burying his face in Shota's chest and downright railing. "It's all right. We've got you. It was just a bad dream." Izuku shook his head. He was too hysterical, yet to explain anything, so Shouta worked on calming him down first and foremost. Hitoshi brought them water bottles, and then he pulled Eri into his lap on the other side of the room. "You're okay. I'm here," Shouta continued to whisper. He could only imagine what horrible events had stirred in Izuku's nightmare. There had been so much more in the last few months alone. Just when Shouta thought Izuku was calming down and could at least give him a hint, Izuku's weight shifted, and he was left holding a ball of flurf. "Oh, kiddo," Shouta whispered, running a hand down Izuku's back. "Why'd he morph?" Hitoshi asked. "Stress," Shouta answered. "He'll morph back when he's ready." He could use his own quirk to make Izuku morph back, but that didn't solve anything in the long run, and unless Izuku asked him, he wouldn't. He just wished he knew what the nightmare was about. He was flying blind, repeating the same generic platitudes that clearly weren't helping. If he knew the actual demons Izuku was fighting, he could help a lot better. But there were just too many to pick from. Overhaul, the summer camp, the USJ, not to mention the nightmares he's gotten before about his birth parents. An electric shock jolted Shouta. "What's the date?" "What?" Hitoshi asked. "Date. Now." Hitoshi fumbled for his phone. "October 27th? He silently swore. He'd forgotten all about the anniversary. Clearly Izuku hadn't. And like the kind, considerate kid he was, he hadn't come to Shouta with his own problems. He hugged his son a little tighter. "You dreamed about your mom, didn't you?" Yeah, that would do it. Even all these years later, nothing brought Izuku to that level of hysteria quite like his mother's death. All the other fights he's been in this year probably only fueled his imagination to create a truly brutal murder. Shouta was also willing to bet Izuku had plenty of dreams about it recently, and that this was the real reason he was so tired lately. "I wish you would have told me they were starting again," Shouta said. "We'll call Dr. Nashiora tomorrow, okay?" Izuku burrowed into his stomach, still trembling. "He has to go to a doctor?" Eri asked. She learned to trust Recovery Girl, but that was about as far as medical professionals went. Doctors of any kind made her nervous. And it wasn't surprising. She didn't want the rest of her family going with them either. Hitoshi played with her hair. "You know how you go to talk to Hound Dog a few times a week?" She looked at him and nodded. "It's like that," Hitoshi said. "No white coats." Shouta hadn't realized Izuku had never told Hitoshi about Dr. Nashiora. Izuku only went a few times in a year, and the last time he'd been was before UA. But maybe he shouldn't be so surprised Izuku was open with his trauma and struggles to someone like Hitoshi. She relaxed immensely. "Oh, is Dr. Nashi also part dog?" Shouta chuckled. "No. Dr. Nashiora has a plant quirk. He can grow leaves out of his fingers." There was also a green tinge to his skin, and Izuku had latched onto the coloration as a kid and declared that meant the man wanted as his therapist. Can he help Suzu? Eri asked. Yeah, Shouta said. He ran a hand down Izuku's back again, even though Izuku was a foot taller than when Hisashi first met him. His cat form hadn't grown that much. Whether that was because the way Izuku pictured his shifts, or a reflection on Izuku's biological maturity, Shouta could never guess. They sat in the silence for a while longer, until Izuku drifted off to sleep again in his lap, still a cat. That was fine, for now. If he was able to get back to sleep after all, that was what Shouta wanted. Izuku could go morph back in the morning. Coaxing Eri and Itoshi back to sleep was a little harder, neither one willing to part from Izuku. They ended up recreating the tunnel pile they'd had earlier during the movie, and Shouta stayed awake, listening to their deep breaths. Eri eventually drifted off again, and Itoshi was just as awake as he was. Izuku woke up before dawn, sooner than Shouta wanted. He'd been hoping the kid would get some decent sleep, but it looked like he'd be asking for too much. The little whine and paws rubbing at his ears were adorable, though, even with the negative emotions fueling it. Shouta reached up to run his fingers down Izuku's back. Izuku curled up into the touch, flopping to his side on Shota's chest. Not wanting to disturb the peace of the early morning, Shouta kept his questions to himself. Eri was a light sleeper, and even though Itoshi was awake, he was still resting, and it seemed like everyone in his family could use more of that. So Shouta let another 20 minutes go by, and then an hour, until the sun intruded through the window. Even then, he started the typical morning routine first, went to the bathroom, started a pot of coffee, pulled out materials for breakfast. Izuku stayed on the couch for a little longer than before sheepishly joining him in the kitchen as a human. Thank goodness he could morph back on his own. Shouta let the pancake box on the counter to drag Izuku into a hug, testing for a fever at the same time. Surprise, surprise. Izuku's forehead was warm. Not terribly, and if the kid could stay human, then some fever reducer should be enough to curb this before it grew too bad. Why didn't you tell me you were having nightmares again? Shouta asked. He kept his voice quiet, still not trying to chase away the peaceful morning. You've had so much going on, I didn't want to add to it, Izuku admitted. I thought I could learn to handle it on my own. I'll have to, eventually, right? Predicting the answer didn't make it easier to hear. Shouta hugged him a little tighter. Never, kiddo. I don't care if you're on the other side of the country. You can always call me for anything, especially about this. It was only life-changing trauma that he had been helping the kid cope with for 8 years now. It wasn't like he knew what he was dealing with or anything. And even if I'm not available for whatever reason, God knew their line of work meant unpredictability and too soon goodbyes. Then you know you could go to Hisashi, Onamori, or Tensei. Even Tenya and Todoroki are better than handling it yourself. Okay? Don't forget me. Hitoshi called from the living room, waving with his phone over the couch. See, you even have a brother now. No one wants to see you suffer alone, kiddo. Please, don't do that to yourself. Izuku shift. I don't like being a burden on them. So, you can handle our emotional package, but we can't handle yours? Hitoshi asked. He sat up on the couch so he could glare over the back of it at him. Izuku peered over Shota's arm at him. Literally, we met because you were worried I was unhappy or whatever, and you decided you could fix it. You do it for everyone else, all the time. Let us replay the favor once in a while. Hitoshi's little speech was enough to wake Eri, and she darted around the couch to check on Izuku the second she was conscious, burying into his legs and wrapping her arms around him. Are you okay now? Morning, Eri. Sorry for scaring you last night. I'm okay, Izuku said. You have a fever, Shouta corrected. Izuku glared at him. You're sick? Eri asked. No, it's just from the stress, Izuku said, trying to smile back down at her. I'll take it easy today and be good as new. Promise. Eri searched his face before hesitantly nodding. With one last squeeze for Izuku and a quick hair ruffle for Eri, Shouta expected himself and went back to the pancakes. He didn't like a lot of American foods, but boxed pancakes were amazing. Just add water, plop it on the pan, and boom! Nearly instant meal. Hitoshi came in to help again, brandishing Izuku and Eri to the couch so Izuku could rest. While Hitoshi started pouring the battle, Shouta fetched the fever reducers for Izuku, and then returned to the kitchen to pull out whatever acceptable pancake toppings they had in the fridge. After breakfast, Shouta sent Hitoshi and Eri to go play out and hang out in the dorm rooms so he could talk more with Izuku. The list of other things he'd been planning to do today hovered in the back of his mind, but decided to shred the list wasn't exactly a trial. Izuku curled up on the corner of the couch, Eri's fluffy unicorn blanket tucked around him. She'd given it to him before she left, with one of her rare smiles, and Izuku nearly cried accepting it. Now he looked like he wanted to bury under it and never face the light of day again. When did the nightmare start? Shouta asked. He sat down on the other end of the couch. Izuku shrugged. A few weeks ago, I guess? It hurt that Izuku hadn't come to him sooner, even if he knew it wasn't a matter of Izuku not trusting him. After the foster home, Izuku went through a phase where he tried to earn his keep, so to speak. It took a few months for Shouta and Hisashi to realize Izuku did chores because he was worried Shouta would unadopt him if Izuku proved to be too much work. They'd been treading a fine line between those insecurities and teaching Izuku responsibilities ever since. Every now and again, Izuku backtracked into that mindset. He was naturally such a giving person, it was hard to notice. Shouta forced himself to take a deep breath. I wish you could come talk to me sooner. But I understand why you felt like you couldn't. But I promise you, no matter what else is going on, no matter how busy I am, I'd rather you say something. Izuku nodded, twisting the edge of the blanket in his fingers. I know. I realized yesterday it was getting bad, but then you had all those reports last night, and I just felt like I could wait. Shouta blinked. First of all, I'd be overjoyed to have a reason not to do those reports. Never let them get in your way. Izuku cracked a smile. Second, it's okay to be selfish when your health is involved. That was what killed Shouta. Last night was entirely avoidable. If Izuku had just said something, he'd had the perfect opportunity while they did dishes and everything. You wouldn't get mad at Eri or Hitoshi for asking for help, would you? You weren't mad at Todoroki the other day. Of course not, but I can predict how I react. Other people might not feel the same way. I promise you, we do. Izuku wrinkled his nose. Scooting over on the couch, Shouta drew him into another hug. I'll tell you as many times as it takes, kiddo. We care about you, and we want to know when you're struggling. Izuku dropped his head on Shota's shoulders. It's easier to care for others than let them care for me. Shouta snorted. He understood that mentality more than he should, and it was probably one of the worst habits Izuku had picked up from him. Asking for help is one of the hardest things to learn, especially as a hero. But it's a lesson you have to learn to survive, both professionally and as a civilian. I'll work on it, Izuku promised. That's all I ask, Shouta said. Bring it up with Dr. Nashimura, too. He hadn't scheduled the appointment yet, but it'll be the first thing he did after this conversation. I will. Nodding, Shouta indulged the cuddles for a few more minutes. Once they were both a little more emotionally stable, he went to make the appointment and came back to the couch to finish the reports with Izuku's head in his lap, running his fingers through curly hair while Izuku dozed. Hitoshi and Eri came back for lunch, Hisashi in tow, and Izuku was subjected to another lecture about caring for himself. Honestly, with how often the man had to repeat it to Shouta and Izuku, he should just record it. Save them all a bunch of time. They were in the middle of cleaning up after lunch when Shota's phone rang. A quick glance at the caller ID had him stopping outside of the apartment. No way was he letting his nosy kids eavesdrop on a call from Todoroki's case agent. Aizawa speaking. Good afternoon. It's Kayama. I have some updates on Todoroki's case. He paced the hallway. I'm listening. Kayama heaved a deep sigh. Based on the testimony from both older siblings and the home visit, I myself concluded while Todoroki Enji was out of the house, I have enough circumstantial evidence to at least bring the case before a judge. Well, that was half the battle, Shouta supposed. But we both know how Mr. Todoroki is going to respond to that. All we have is circumstantial evidence, which means he'll have enough to wiggle room to win the case. What kind of deficient proof do you need to swing our case in our favor? Something that would prove living under Mr. Todoroki's care is unsafe for Shouta. And considering Shouta lives in the dorms now, you're gonna have a hard time getting enough evidence to convince a judge to remove Shouta from Enji's care. Perhaps it was disrespectful to switch to their first names, but Shouta appreciated it. Saying their full names every time was a mouthful. What about a psych evolution? So far, all Shouta's attempts to get Todoroki to a therapist have been met with stubborn refusal. What happened to Rei Todoroki no doubt played a large part in Shota's decision, but this might be enough to at least get Shouta to the door. It would be enough for someone off campus to avoid the biased perception in court. That would be workable. Kayama hummed. It would help, but with someone this prophetic, I'm so worried it wouldn't be enough. I don't like bringing cases to the court that might backfire on the kid I'm trying to help. No, I don't either. Shouta agreed completely with that. There's also the matter of who gets custody of Shouta if we were even to win. Shouta hadn't had the time to plan that far ahead, too busy trying to even reach that point in the first place. I'd imagine one of his older siblings would. That would be the base case scenario. However, Miss Fuyumi still lives with Enji, and giving her custody would only put Shouta back where he started. Mr. Natsuo has his own apartment, but it's a studio. Plus, he's only 19, and I hesitate to put this burden on someone just starting university. Completely fair assessment, Shouta thought. At 23, and already fully working full-time, taking on responsibility of a kid had been a lot. Shouta might be older and living in the dorms, but the financial burden alone was asking too much of a university student. Given Shoto's age, if he has another trusted adult he trusts, I'd be willing to look into transferring custody to them. I can ask him about it this afternoon. Shouta offered. That still didn't solve the problem of winning the case in the first place, and doing it without the media noticing. I have one more idea. Kayama started. It's a little extreme, and I don't usually advocate for it, but giving Shota's current living arrangements with the dorms and his intended career path, I believe emancipation may be an option for him. Shouta sucked in a breath. If we find the right judge, we wouldn't even have to go through Endeavor. Minors typically only petition for emancipation for a few reasons, the main one being abuse, so parents weren't always involved in the process. It was entirely possible for Shouta to win his own freedom without even telling Endeavor, leaving the man to figure it out later. The only concern would be Shota's ability to financially provide for himself, but a declaration of emancipation would grant him access to any funds his family put aside for him. That should be enough to sustain him until graduation, and no one will doubt his ability to land a job right away. That wasn't even taking into account the support Shouta would receive from his siblings or his friends. For legal purposes, Shouta would need to be independent, but like hell would Shouta leave him on his own. I'll bring the idea up with him, Shouta promised. I'll send you some relative information then. We might still need a psych evaluation to prove to the judge he's better off from his father, too. I'll see what I can do. He wasn't above slicing Izuku on Shouta to convince him, or even making it a mandatory homework assignment for the whole class. Actually, the entire class probably would benefit from some mandatory therapy. You'll have to talk to Hound Dog. For now, one problem at a time. Ending the call, he went back inside into the apartment to check in with everyone. Izuku read the area on the couch. Hitoshi passed out on the other side in the kitchen. Hisashi had started reorganizing Shota's cabinets. How am I supposed to find anything if you move it all? Shouta complained. Because I'm putting things where they make sense. Your flower With your plates? There was room in the cabinet. Hisashi peered over his glasses. You do this on purpose, don't you? There is no way you're this incompetent in the kitchen after I trained you for 8 years. I was storing supplies where they fit incompetent. Hisashi moved a stack of bowls where Shouta used to keep the flour. Because logically you should store all the dishware together. I refuse to believe you learned nothing from me. You totally do this on purpose, you little gremlin. Believe what you want. I need to run over to the 1A dorms for a bit. Everything okay? At the moment. Kayama had some ideas for Todoroki's case. I need to run it by the kid. Sounds promising. Good luck. Slipping on his boots and capture weapon, Shouta made his way back out of the apartments and to the class dorms. Oh, freaking Shouta does that on purpose. Ain't no way he does not do that on purpose. He fucking does that on purpose. You can't tell me otherwise. He does that on purpose. Fucker does that on purpose. I know that for a fact. Oh my god. Because, okay, who the fuck stores flour next to your plates? That is diabolical. I'm sorry, is it unlogical to store them together? No, you put Tupperware with Tupperware. What? You don't, why would you do that? That's actually ludicrous. Like, who would do such a thing? I'm sorry. Not even I. And I have a weird organizing scheme. Like, I'll admit, I organize stuff in a very weird area. But even I'm not like that. I walked away from the mic. Sorry. That's what you heard. Me slowly going away. I hope you did hear me. But, like, even I don't do that. Like, I'm sorry. Who does that? Shouta, apparently. And I don't know if he's actually doing it to spite Hisashi. Like, he's not spite, but, like, mess with Hisashi. Or if he genuinely stores his Tupperware that way. And if it's just to, like, hee-hee-ha-ha Hisashi, why do all that trouble? Or does he do it, like, before, like, he knows Hisashi's coming the next day, so he fucks up his cabinets? Like that? And then when Hisashi gets here, he goes to fix everything, and he's like, why do you do this? Like, I swear you do this just to spite me. Like, I swear you do this just to bother me. And Shota's like, I don't know what you mean, that's how I store stuff. Like, logical, duh. When he's like, that's not how he stores stuff. Ugh, I'm never going braless again. I hate this shit. I don't know. Y'all can do braless. I can't. That shit hurts. Okay, anyways. Sorry. I probably shouldn't say that again. I probably shouldn't. Anyway, sorry, I was putting on my bra, which is why I walked away from the mic to get it, because my bra, that is, because it was bugging. It was like, I'm not gonna explain it. Sorry, that's conversation that only close friends and my boyfriend will hear about. Actually, I don't even think I'm gonna talk to my close friends about it. I don't know, maybe I'll bring it up with my boyfriend one day. I'm definitely gonna bring it up because they mentioned how, they mentioned something, and I'm gonna bring that up. I'm gonna be like, yeah, no, never doing that because of this. But anyways, who does that? Anyways, I think Shoto is gonna get emancipated. I like that Izuku finally got found out. Finally, he's gonna get the support he needs. And you know what? Yeah, it makes sense why Izuku would fall back and have that I don't need help people pleaser mentality. It stems from not wanting to be abandoned. It stems from not wanting to be a bother. As I said, it stems from growing up in an abusive household, right? He saw his mother being beat, being all this stuff, and instead of putting all his problems on her, he helped her. He became a helper. As I mentioned before, this is just another way of explaining it, which is what I said. There's not much I could say anymore. I think that's all. See you next time. So, as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.